I have long criticized conspiracy theories. My stance on them remains the same as when I wrote about them in 2021. In two texts from that year, the first titled QAnon and the Blood Libel, the second, The Era of Batshit Crazy, I demonstrated utter contempt and repugnance for the mentality of the conspiracy theorists, whether they are professional grifters or casual believers. In the first text, the focus was on how conspiracy theories like QAnon are nothing more than the repackaging of the blood libel perpetrated against the Jews in medieval Europe. They hit practically the same beats: the existence of a secret group of villains who represent some kind of otherness and who sacrifice children to the devil in exchange for various powers. Add to that the recent belief that they drink the blood of frightened and abused children to nourish themselves with adrenochrome and rejuvenate, and there you have QAnon and conspiracy theories of the same ilk. In my second text from 2021, I focused on the hysterical conspiracy theory against the COVID-19 vaccine. There, I pointed out how several rich and powerful people who spreaded anti-vaccine theories online jumped the queue to get the vaccine they so vehemently criticized. This led me to conclude that their goal was for the common people to suffer as much as possible and die for pure amusement, since a drastic decrease in the number of workers historically has the effect of increasing wages. As higher wages do not economically benefit the ruling class, their desire to see the poor suffer and die, even when it harms their wealth, explained the situation. Well then, the FBI's released and heavily redacted files on the Epstein case do absolutely nothing to change my contempt for conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists. Even supposedly secular online personalities are mainly touting the numerous uncorroborated leads that appeared in recent years, some of which are increasingly fantastical accusations from people who demonstrably had zero connection to Epstein. These pseudo-accusations grew in the US as the case became more famous between 2010 and 2020. During that period, more and more people appeared simply reporting fantasies, which is normal in any high-profile case. This happens in any country in the world. All of this was released alongside Epstein's genuine emails, which are themselves quite incriminating, suggesting that Trump's FBI released an excessive amount of documents, including fantastical accusations, precisely to overwhelm analysis and confuse readers. The current FBI director, Kash Patel, and the current Attorney General, Pam Bondi, are two Trump appointees extremely loyal to their boss, having been part of the Trumpist MAGA movement and were even heralds of QAnon. The irony of it all is that the MAGA and QAnon movements, which are twins, in their eagerness to expose and condemn the secret group of child abusers and sacrificers that they believe to be socialists, twice selected a president who truly has ties to Epstein. They elected a president who is himself accused of being a possible abuser of minors. Last week, when the U.S. Attorney General was questioned in a deposition by a Republican congressman about why the current Justice Department or the current FBI refused to interview proven Epstein survivors to find out the names of accomplices, Pam Bondi had a fit of rage and said that that type of questioning was Trump derangement syndrome, a term that the MAGA movement uses to accuse anyone who criticizes Trump of being crazy. Bondi began talking about how the Dow Jones and NASDAQ were hitting record highs, and that's why the left wants to attack Trump, something totally outside the scope of that deposition and unrelated to the Epstein case. There's just one problem. The congressman who asked the question, as I said, is a Republican, and he himself defends the Trump administration. You might ask, but Fernando, didn't you say conspiracy theories are ridiculous? How then can you say that Epstein is an abuser and that Trump's FBI is trying to confuse people to help their boss escape the shadow of the accusations against him? It's quite simple. Conspiracy theories are fantastical things. Conspiracies, on the other hand, exist, but all of them, especially the big ones, cannot remain secret forever. In fact, even conspiracy theorists agree with this in principle, since for them, none of the conspiracies they claim exist have managed to remain secret. If they had, the conspiracy theorist wouldn't know about them, would they? Trump tries to hide or downplay his connection to Epstein, but he can't. I don't think that even qualifies as a conspiracy since it's being done practically in the open. The MAGA movement says that Clinton had ties to Epstein. Yes, he did. A lot of ties, in fact. And even Clinton visited Epstein's infamous island fewer times than Trump, and is mentioned far less times in Epstein's emails. 2 weeks ago, the Clintons said they would testify about the case if called by the U.S. Congress, and requested that the testimony be public. The Trump administration, however, determined that the testimony should be confidential. Interpret that however you want. As I alluded before, the focus has been much less on Epstein's incriminating emails than on fantastic, uncorroborated accusations. It seems that many people haven't understood that the FBI, pressured by parts of Congress and the public, released an absurd amount of documents related to Epstein, even leads and accusations that could never be true given the dates of the alleged events, among other things. Jeffrey Epstein supposedly committed suicide in a New York prison in 2019, midway through Donald Trump's first term. There is strong evidence suggesting he may not have committed suicide. It's true, but this isn't a conspiracy theory in the same way that when the 1972 break-in at the Democratic Party headquarters in the Watergate complex was still being investigated, the suspicion that the burglars were linked to Richard Nixon wasn't classified as a conspiracy theory, even though Nixon was the US president at the time. When it was discovered that Nixon was likely behind the break-in in 1974, however, he resigned the presidency and Vice President Gerald Ford took over. Trump is increasingly linked to far greater crimes, but he will never resign. I repeat, conspiracy theories are fantastical. Conspiracies do exist, but they eventually come to light. And what about Epstein himself? The emails, as I said, are highly incriminating. They also show that many rich and powerful people around the world are grotesque and probably participate in child abuse and perhaps even the death of several of them. Give enough money and power to certain people and they will do the same they would do if they were poor. After all, child abuse and murder, including that perpetrated by groups of people, exists even among the disadvantaged. The Epstein case exposes something that is already known about the ruling classes. They abuse their power because of the feeling they have of being above any law. What the Epstein case does not show is that there is a cult of Baal or Molech, where children's blood is extracted to rejuvenate members of the sect of atheist communist billionaires, much less that this cult has existed since biblical times and extends to the present day in a virtually unbreakable line of ritualistic initiation. Even if some of these rich people like to dress up in bizarre orgies like in the movie Eyes Wide Shut. It's a pastime for them. It always has been. I know I'm not going to please most people, but this is my take on the Epstein case.